Today is Monday, December 12th, 2022. We do have a quorum present, so we're going to start our meeting off. And we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance by Janie.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Janie. And Denise is going to read our mission statement.
Toloso Midway Independent School District educates every student to be a lifelong learner, a person of integrity, and a positive contributor to society.
Thank you, Denise. All right, next brings us to public comment. The next item on the agenda is public comment, which is the time for members of the audience to address the Board of Trustees. Before we begin, I will remind our audience members of the board's procedures for handling public comments. Each public comment speaker will be allowed a maximum of 3 minutes to address the board, except that non-English speakers will be allowed a maximum of 6 minutes to address the board. Please keep your comments or criticisms civil and courteous, avoiding using profanity, and refrain from making personal attacks on others during your opportunity to speak. Yelling, inappropriate, uncivil, or discriminatory comments will not be permitted. Lastly, we ask that you not discuss students who are not your own child. I also caution you that your public comment should not complain about individual school employees by name or position, or other than your own child. Identify students. As presiding officer, I am obligated to determine whether a person addressing the board has attempted to administratively resolve any complaints or grievances about which they want to address the board that involve district officers or employees. In the event your comment constitutes a complaint or charge against an employee or officer, it may be necessary for me to interrupt and ask you to stop and direct you to proceed with the school's district formal grievance procedures, or to have the item heard in executive session depending on the nature of the complaint. Any concerns or complaints regarding individual district employees, students, or parents must be resolved via the district's grievance process, which can be found online and includes policies DGBA, FNG, and GF. Thank you. Our first speaker is Sylvia Henderson.
Hi, my name is Sylvia Henderson. As a former teacher and the daughter of a former teacher administrator who worked in the field for 55 years, I want to ask the board to make a rule for all the teachers that they should not have their own children in their respective classroom in order to avoid any potentially appearance of bias or impropriety. This will foster community respect and trust, again, especially after the incident that we had last year. As the new board members, I can tell you that parents want transparency and positive changes. One example of positive changes is your appointment to the board. We have great kids. We just need to invest in additional counselors and educate our teachers more about special education, what it means a 504, an IEP program, as well as the legal repercussions if they're not followed. This will lead to an overall improvement to our special education department and improvement to our children and the special education system, which is not only kids with disabilities, it's all the kids with not visible disabilities like mine. Dyslexia, ADHD, auditory disorder, you name it. So, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Henderson. And our second speaker is Daryl Keach. I hope that I said your last name correctly.
Thank you. My issue actually isn't, I guess, related directly to what happens in the school. It's a safety issue. I live at Sessions in Juliana, and actually I have one kid that's already graduated and a senior that's about to, so it doesn't directly affect my kids in the school district. But there's a proposed apartment complex that's trying to change zoning to go in at that location at 37 in Sessions. And the traffic count or the traffic study by the city is projecting that the traffic will go from about 650 cars a day on Session to nearly 5,000. Part of their proposal is widening Sessions, but only for part of it where it doesn't even connect to McKenzie. They're not even going to add sidewalks to Sessions. The developer has refused to put in sidewalks. If you've driven Sessions, you know what Sessions looks like. And so the craziness is they're also wanting the developer to talk to TxDOT to put in delineators, kind of like is on Everhart where Best Buy is, to take part of the frontage road away from the frontage to handle the Sessions traffic. So I don't know how a school bus is going to turn from Sessions onto 37 either if it can't make a wide turn. So on both ends of Sessions, it's going to be crazy traffic if Sessions, where it's widened, narrows back and doesn't connect to McKenzie with all of this traffic, how the kids are going to safely get on and off of a bus. I've also presented the same proposal to the Calallen School District because Calallen school buses also use Sessions because the far end of Sessions is in the Calallen School District. So you've got, by my count, at least 6 buses a day. There's 3 TM and at least 1 Calallen bus. There might be 2. So I'm asking this board to look into this matter. I don't know if that's superintendent. I have the proposal as the city is presented. The Development Services has actually already approved this, recommended it to City Council. It was a split vote, so it will need the City Council. They will have to have a supermajority. We have had 30 or so residents try to fight this. It will be City Council that will have to ultimately approve this. So as many people from the community that can help us fight this. It would also mean if they put up these delineators, if you exit Violet, you wouldn't be able to turn on to Sessions. That would mean more traffic at McKenzie. You would have, instead of 3 lanes on the frontage road, 2 to handle what already backs up at Violet. I mean, there's so many ways this doesn't make sense for all the residents in the Northwest area. I just wanted to bring this to the board's attention. I don't know if you've seen, the guy thinks he already has a done deal. He started construction on some of it. It's zoned for residential, which is what fits the character of this community. I know the district needs more housing, but this isn't the place for 280 apartments is what he wants to build in that area. The traffic just doesn't make sense there. Trying to run school buses back to the Mott's and Nueces Town area, that part of Sessions would not be improved. As you see it now, school buses or cars have to pull off the road, off of the pavement to pass school buses. And that would continue with nearly 5,000 cars a day, even by the city's own traffic estimates. So if you want, I can leave you with the city's information. If that's appropriate or not, you can download it from the city's website. For that, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Keach. All right, now comes the fun stuff.
Yes, it does. Madam President, members of the board, we're going to recognize 3 special groups of student athletes: our cross country, our volleyball, and our tennis. Coach, you want to come forward and tell us what makes these kids special?
Has his name right there.
Okay. Let's get beside you so that you can give it to her and she can give it to the student athlete. And then we can take a picture. How's that?
Okay, good. Coach Castillo, come over. Get the girls.
Athletes, after you give your certificate, if you'll go around and greet the trustees, and then we'll take a picture.
These are all girls.
We will take as much time as we need. We're not gonna rush this. This is
Second-
making
the
some
second one,
memories.
second one.
So feel comfortable to get where you need to get. And let's recognize some really special kids.
Just real quick, I'm the Coach Hernandez. I've been here, this is my 30th year here. I've been the cross-country coach the last 29 years. These young ladies, so I've been the girls' coach for the last 29 years. And these young ladies were district champs this year, and they're also regional qualifiers. This is under my tenure, these are the 12th time these young ladies. My program has won district, and what I'm really proud of is that the 23rd time they've qualified to regional. So that's a big plus for these, and they've continued the tradition, and I'm pretty sure it's going to continue on next year. Next year we got some of these girls coming back. So these are the only ones that could make it. There had some other ones that are FFA meetings and things like that, so they couldn't make it. But I do have one.
Coach, can you say a few words about the commitment that they have to make?
Basically, what we do we have practice. We start 1 week after school starts. We're up at 6:30 every morning, and then Monday through Friday. And then in the afternoons, Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday after school from 4:30 to about 5:30. So, and then this goes from late July till all the way till in October. And when we're fortunate to make it to state, it'll go into November. And we've done that the last 6 times too. So we've done that. So they put a lot of miles, about 35 to 40 miles a week. I mean, I'm talking continuously, every week. So they put a lot of work in. I really appreciate that. And of course, and they know it. I'm never satisfied. Every day we're on. So I've always looked for excellency, and they know that. But I do appreciate, and I don't tell them enough, I do appreciate everything they do, because it takes a lot of commitment from their part. And it's a lot of hard work that nobody gets to see. We see Saturday meets, 2, 3, 8, 13 minutes, 14 minutes of a window, or all the time they put in to get to that. It's a lot of hard work they've done. So I really appreciate all they've done. And then, like I said, I like these. Leah Avila.
Congratulations.
Go around it. Go by the end. There you go. Cami Castillo. Madison Gummo.
Congratulations, Leah.
Congratulations.
Basketball and track. I didn't know that. Good job.
Savannah Sainz, and then Raven Ramos, and Alexis Rios weren't here because they had other classes.
Congratulations. Great.
Want to get some pictures? Do I have parents back here? Let me get over here. Coach, get in there with Kim.
There we go.
1, 2, and
Congratulations, y'all.
Good job. Don't forget about Coach Renati. Thank you for everything.
It's always a bad thing to follow Coach H, because I'll never be able to match what he's been able to do. He's put a lot of time, a lot more than I probably ever will. But at every banquet, I usually brag about the guys, and I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I start by, this year, guys, we ran over 4,000 miles. So that probably doesn't help our recruiting, right? Nobody wants to put in that time and effort. But we couldn't do that without support of the parents. So that's my biggest thank you is to the parents for getting these kids up early every morning, all through the summer and all through the season. But we brought the district championship back home this was 6th year that we were without a district championship. So these guys were able to bring it back. So thank you for bringing it back home. It's back in our trophy case. But we have won 8 individual, out of the last 10 years, we've won 8 individual championships. Jeremiah Anderson will be our leader next year. He'll be coming back. Ivan Avila is one of our graduating seniors. Anthony Garrett was our champion this year and last year as well. Cristian Moreno is our freshman. We'll be coming back for more next year. Rene Munguia, a senior, couldn't be here. Camden Ramos, same thing, he's a senior. So thank you so much for your support. We couldn't do it without you guys.
Great job. Congratulations.
good job.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Good job. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
Yeah, you're right. You're right there.
Coach, can I get a
Congratulations.
picture?
Yes.
Over here, guys. Yes. Another picture.
Got you again. I can beat him up.
Congratulations. Thank you, Coach. Congratulations. Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it. Coach O'Neill, what sports next? Tennis?
Congratulations, guys. Thank you. Well done. I see it every morning on the Sunday.
Thank you. Thank you.
Volleyball, we're gonna do volleyball.
Volleyball?
Yes, sir.
Coach O'Neill's system. She thinks we're doing tennis. Okay. Volleyball? Volleyball. Morning, Coach Chomp. Good to see you. Come over here, you're going. Come on, ladies.
In the back.
Yes, fine. No. Over here.
Sorry.
All right. Coach, tell us about these young ladies.
Well, I was super fortunate to be able to coach these girls, and we're missing a few of them. But it was a really fun group to start my first year back head coaching here. So we had a great season. They worked really hard. They came in, and it can be a little bit difficult having a new coach, and they came in and they took everything I had to say and they ran with it, and we're excited. We got a lot of seniors next year, so we're gonna have a lot of varsity experience, and we're looking forward to a great season next year. Yeah.
Coach, let me just say one thing. I heard about the Cal Allen TM rivalry, but had never really experienced it. So I go to the volleyball game over at Cal Allen, and I walk in and the energy just slams you in the face.
Yeah.
And I've been around athletics forever. And then we went down 2-0 and everything's against it. And to watch these kids fight back really made me so proud to be a
Yep.
part of TM.
Yep.
Congratulations. You won me over big time that night. Congratulations.
Yeah, and they did the same in our second round. We had a tough second round against Port Lavaca. They were first in their district, and coming in second round, that's like a regional semifinals, finals game right there. And to face in second round, we went down 2 sets, and they fought that third set, and I couldn't ask for more from them. And they did great things, and we're expecting great things next year too. So I have Maddie Hinojosa, Alyssa Silvas, but one Alyssa, sorry. Alyssa, Jasmine, and Aubrey.
Well, ladies, congratulations. If you'll go around and greet the trustees, we'll take a picture. The senior needs to be here. You're the senior. No. The senior.
Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, thank you so much. Sorry.
All right, who's breaking things?
Thank you so much. Thank you. Good to see you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you.
Take a picture.
Congratulations.
We got some parents here. Get right here. Right there.
1, 2, and 3. Got it.
What an
Great
honor.
job.
We're a little clumsy in real life, not that much on the court.
Have you met us?
Yeah, but I'm on the court. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Oh, you're
You're like standing on.
Tennis?
Yes, sir.
Tennis.
There's a lot of.
You said 6:15.
It's gonna be 6:30.
Coach, come on in. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good to see you. Bring your, how are you?
Get them all in here.
Looking good.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming tonight.
straight ahead.
Like the shirts.
Right here.
How are you?
You can face the audience.
Good to see
Come
you
right here.
tonight.
Hey.
Dennis, oh, look at that. Coach, look at this is awesome.
Almost got all of them, missing two.
Come around,
One's
come
at soccer
around.
practice.
Good to see you.
Yeah, one's studying for the IOD.
And then we'll take a photo.
Congratulations. How are you? Good to see you. Come on in, let's make room for all of you. Thank you for coming tonight. How are you, sir?
All right, how you doing?
Doing well. Coach, this says a lot about you. Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you.
Guys, y'all can scoot over a little bit more. You can take a few steps.
Then get further in.
Come on in. There you go. I want to see all of you.
There we go. Okay. Okay. Listen. All right. Okay, so this group went 13-6 this year, which was really good. We graduated our entire varsity except for 2. So we had 2 returning starters out of 14, and we were still able to win the district title for the 4th time in the last 5 years. We also won the bi-district championship for the 6th straight time. We won the area championship for the 6th straight time, and we made the regional quarterfinals for the 6th straight time. We also finished number 11 in the state, and we have been top 11 in the state for the last 3 years straight. We also had the district MVP. He's not here. He's at soccer practice, Wolfgang Lopez. We also had the 2 newcomers of the year with Karina Cordova, who is not here because she's studying for a UT final that's tomorrow, and Kenny Hayes, who's here. So our entire starting lineup received all district honors, which I'm not going to go through all that, but our entire starting lineup received honors. And I think the entire team got academic all district. So, so they've done a great job. Okay, so if I call you, walk over here. Okay, Michaela Aceves. Yeah. Joe Alonso. Joe Alonso.
Shake the hands of the trustees right through there.
Go, y'all make room for Michaela to go through. She's got to go shake hands. Joe Alejandro Arango.
What do you like better, singles or doubles? Doubles, okay.
You shake everybody's hand, Alex. Isabella Barber.
Singles or doubles?
Okay.
Okay.
Ana Barbosa.
Singles or doubles? What do you like better?
Abram Boteo.
Okay, all the boys like singles. What do you like better, singles or doubles? Singles.
Absi Ceballos.
What do you like better?
Congratulations.
Double? Singles or
Natalie
doubles, what do you like better?
Henry Fulton. Sochi Gama. Ben Gomez. Kenneth Hayes. Hannah Henderson. Brandon Howard. Allie Leonard.
Good job.
Mark Miller. Cody Monte. Professional setting. Michael Moreau. It's only yours. Congratulations.
Maybe the best for last.
Congratulations. Great job. And Seth Rossi.
Good idea. What do you like better, singles or doubles? Singles?
Do you like golf?
Singles or doubles?
Golf, that's what I'm talking about.
Singles or doubles?
Coach, you want to try to get a team picture?
Sure.
Tom was in the back.
Mark, get the back.
Yeah, guys in the back, girls, no, girls in the back, guys in the front. Guys take a knee, guys take a knee. Take a knee. Girls behind them.
I got the move.
You gotta take care of the girls, you know? Squeeze in tight, shoulder to shoulder. Hey guys, right in the front. Okay, we have to stand one. Get them all in there, is that?
If I can have the last two students kind of squeeze in
Behind
between.
the boys?
Yeah, in the same aisles as the girls. Yes, right there. One on,
Find a window.
just find a window, scoot over right there. Okay, and then you can, yes, sir. Thank you, perfect. All right, guys, here we go. 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
Great job.
Wait,
Oh.
wait, please.
Need a bigger boardroom just for you guys.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Y'all can head out. That way. This board.
Congratulations.
Ready for spring?
Thank you, Coach.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was awesome.
Yeah, that's, doesn't get much better than
Okay. Is Patrick here?
that. He is.
He's right outside.
Let me
I'll grab him.
remind him that he's,
He's in charge of the students. Lighting them up.
Oh,
He's the supervisor in the green room.
and Philip, I think, went to get his, but we can, I don't think we have to wait on Philip.
okay. The next item is discuss and consider the recommendation of a kitchen upgrade contract for high school kitchen equipment upgrades.
Madam President, members of the board, we have Mr. Hernandez that's going to be making this presentation for your consideration and review.
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, good evening. Also, to help me with this presentation, I have Mr. Bill Wilson with me, in case you all have any questions. But I'm going to start with a little bit of background history, because we have 3 new board members. So this process actually started back last March, April, where we have an excessive fund balance in our cafeteria funding, and it can only be used in food service. And we found out for food service equipment and related expenses. We thought at one point that we'd be able to use it to pay for meals, to supplement the meals for the students that weren't get qualified for free and reduced, but that was not the case. So we can use it strictly for kitchen equipment and stuff needed in the cafeteria. At the time, our vendor was Airmark that we were working with, and they had requested that we put in a pizza oven and an impender oven that they could cook barbecue. So we started the process. We reached out to the board in April with qualifications to hire an architect for this project, because it was going to be well over the $50,000 threshold, and we needed an architect for this. At that time, we approved Mr. Bill Wilson as the architect for this project. We had worked with Mr. Wilson in several other projects. He did the chiller, the original chiller repair, and got us the new Daikin chiller at the high school. We did the switchgear replacements at the high school, and all the HVAC projects here at the middle school. And we were pleased with this work, so we selected him for this project. We'd also worked with them on a restroom renovation at the high school, at the commons area, the first of the restrooms that needed to be renovated, and we still have a long list. So Bill was selected, we brought him on board, and we started the process. And then, as you know, in May, we switched food service vendors. We still continued on. Sodexo did request that we proceed with the pizza oven and the impender oven for barbecue. In looking at, as Bill started doing his research, it was gonna require vent hoods. The kitchen codes had changed and we had new requirements. So it wasn't simply purchasing a pizza oven and an oven and just installing them. Both pieces of equipment had to be under a vent hood. So his team did the work and they found the best location because we're gonna have to do penetrations into the roof, and where the electrical outlies and everything, and allow us growth for the future. So that was some work and we got through that. We came, I believe it was in August, September, to go out for bid, and we've gone out to bid for the process. Back on September 30th of 2022, the bid packet went out. On November 16th, we had the pre-bid meeting, and then we accepted the bids on December the 6th. The total scope of the work is, in addition to the two pieces of equipment, the vent hood, we also wanted to replace the freezer and walk-in cooler. Those are original to the building in 1983, 84 is when they were installed. However, as we did our research, the lead time for those pieces of equipment is over a year, and it was hard to get a true bid on something. Nobody wants to bid on something that's gonna be a year later. So at that time, we decided that the actual box is in good shape, so we're gonna just change out all the compressor. Basically, the box will stay the same, but all the guts and all the cooling equipment will get changed out in this bid order. We also did some alternate bids. There's a need for an additional 3-compartment sink. The current sink was only 2 compartments, and that's no longer compliant to code. So the Sodexo couldn't use it. So we're gonna upgrade it to a 3-compartment sink that they're compliant. We also installing an air curtain on the delivery door. It's the only campus that doesn't have a air curtain, so we'll go ahead and install that in this project. And those are bid alternates 1 and 4. We had also looked at installing new shelving in the refrigerators and freezers, but we feel that bid came in a little bit high. We feel as a group, we can just reach out to one of the local food service providers and get it for a cheaper cost than what was bid out. All right? So we went out to bid. We had 3 companies that submitted qualifications and then submitted bids. It was Weaver and Jacobs, Barcom Construction, and South Texas Building Partners. You can see the rankings on it. It was qualifications, and of course, cost was the biggest factor. South Texas Building Partners came in at first, Barcom second, and Weaver and Jacobs Constructors at third place, sorry. South Texas.
Can I just interrupt real quick? So the way you, on the top, so South Texas came in with the lowest score of submitting of qualifications?
Yes, sir. They were all pretty close, though. I mean, it was 46, but they had 42.
All right.
But the largest factor is cost, and when you look at that, the bid cost on the 3rd or 4th page is pretty significant. So Bill did his analysis on the teams. They solicited me on, because we've worked with 2 of these vendors before. We've worked with Barcom, and we've worked with South Texas Building Partners. They were the actual company that did the restroom renovation at the high school by the Commons. Their work was punctual. They were on time. There was, I hate to call it a change order. It was an unknown at the time, but we wanted to upgrade and add hot water for the students. So we spent a little bit extra. That was the only change from the original bid proposal, was to add a hot water heater, because that's something we wanted to add as we got into the project. But at weekly meetings, very professional group to work with. Barcom equally has done a number of projects for the district and large construction projects. They built the high school FEMA dome. So either one of the 2 companies, the only company we have not done any work with is Weaver and Jacobs, and they come highly recommended. If we were to be building a school, they would probably be one of the firms that we would be looking at to build a school. Are there any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Once we got all the bids in initially, did we go back to the companies to get a second bid, as comparison, I guess? Like, going back to a company and say, hey, you were actually like $100,000 higher than our lowest bid offer, and they had similar quality control.
You can't do that.
That's not allowed
That's
in
not allowed. So
education.
tonight, if you make the recommendation, we could reach out, then we could negotiate with, so we would negotiate with South Texas. If there's something comes up and they say, hey, we didn't lock in the prices, the equipment's now an additional 100,000, then we have that option to go to the second rank and negotiate with them.
Okay, understood.
What kind of projects do we know the South Texas Building Partners has done? Do we know what kind of projects they've done? Because, I mean, Barcom and Weaver and Jacobs are familiar names. Personally, I've never heard of South Texas Building Partners.
South Texas, they've done work in the area with multiple schools. Bill, if you would like to.
I've worked with all three of these firms. They're all quite good. Weaver and Jacobs is the biggest one. They've probably done 4 ground-up campuses for me, for other school districts. Like, they built 2 campuses for me ground up over in Orange Grove. They built ground-up junior high for me in Cuero. They've recently completed a 32,000 square foot addition that we did for GP High School. They were the contractors on the last ground-up elementary school at GP, and they built the new middle school over there, which was a $50 million school. They're a sizable firm that does dozens and dozens of K-12. That's what they specialize in. The other 2 firms don't do as much K-12. Barcom's been around a long time. They're a solid firm. We've worked with them for a number of years, not as much as we worked with Weaver and Jacobs. South Texas Building Partners, Matt Zell is the owner of that firm. He's been around for a long time, worked for another construction company before he started his own company. They're just not as big. They don't have the bonding capacity. They've done some work for me at Del Mar College for some of the technology projects where the sort of mini refinery pieces that they brought in, and they've done some other projects for us, such as the restroom renovation. They're just not as big. They don't have the same kind of bonding capacity. That's why the ranking is what you see, because the Weaver and Jacobs has done dozens of ground-up K-12 campuses. Barcom has done a number of K-12 campuses, but certainly not the resume or the depth in K-12, but they've been around well over 25 or 30 years. South Texas Building Partners has been around maybe 12 years or so. And it takes time for a small company to build up and get bonding capacity. And so, and it takes, financial strength to have bonding capacity, but they're certainly strong enough to do this project, and it's appropriate for smaller companies often have lower overheads. I think that's reflected in the price to some extent, and I think to a large extent also the high prices that you see from Weaver and Jacobs reflect the fact that they're doing probably $100 million worth of K-12 schools right now. So when you have that much work backlog, then you tend to raise your price. Yeah. So.
Patrick, do you feel comfortable with this South Texas?
Yes, sir. They've done a very good job for us. And more importantly, you gotta remember, they're the general contractor. So they've submitted their subs. So doing the electrical work, the compressors and stuff, that's gonna be Malik. They're a large air conditioning company in the area. They've done work for the district, quite a bit of work. The roofing is Fort, I believe.
That's the one I'm interested in, the roofing, because
Fort or Hayward. Sechrist Hall is the one that's done all the work for us here, but they've gone out of business here in Corpus.
Yeah.
So Port and Hayward are the other 2 big guys, and those are the companies that were bid as the subs for this. So I'm comfortable with their subs. I've learned that that's what you really got to look at is the people who are actually going to be doing the work. And I'm comfortable with the companies that they've listed.
it looks like there's going to be a lot of new holes on our roof.
Couple. We tried to minimize as much as possible, but yes, we don't want to void the warranty on the roof or anything like that. So
Exactly.
that's what we're being careful about.
All right.
Great discussion. Any more questions? Okay, do we have a recommendation?
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, it is recommended that the board authorize a contract with South Texas Building Partners Incorporated of Corpus Christi for a fixed price of $308,819.00 for the base bid and bid alternates 1 and 4 on the Tolosa Midway ISD High School kitchen equipment upgrades project. Additionally, this amount includes $7,500 of owner's allowance as part of the contract amount.
Any more discussion? Do we have a motion?
I'll motion that.
Ben motions, makes the motion, and Janie's gonna second it. All in favor? Anybody not in favor? All right, motion carries 6-0.
Congratulations. Thank you, Bill.
We'll get the paperwork going.
Appreciate it.
Thank y'all.
Great job, Patrick, and thank you for the update, so that everybody was on the same page.
You're welcome.
All right, we have a report on teacher incentive allotment.
Yes, enthusiastically reporting this, Madam President, members of the board, the teacher incentive allotment was a key component of House Bill 3, whose primary purpose was to create a vehicle for classroom teachers to make over $100,000 a year. It's a very complex system that is based on student progress, matching, teacher effectiveness. It's rated by an independent Texas Tech University. I'm very familiar with the process because we were one of 2 South Texas districts that was able to put over $110,000 of state money into 5 teachers' hands. The demographics penalize us somewhat because we're not rural and we do not have a high number of economic disadvantaged students. But nonetheless, based on funding for this year, it's possible for a TM teacher to make an additional $17,000 paid by the state, guaranteed for the next 5 years. But it's a process, and Dr. White is going to walk you through a little bit of that process this evening.
Good evening, members of the board. I'm going to go ahead and get started with the presentation on teacher incentive allotment. As such, we will be covering the following topics, just wanting to present a general overview of what TIA is. Then we'll move into program elements of design and what that looks like, focusing in 2 key areas. We'll talk a little bit about allotment funding and what that looks like overall, but then specifically to TMISD, and to go a little bit further in detail about what Mr. Van Matry just mentioned. We'll just make sure we include some of the essential factors that we need to be mindful of when we're going through this process. And then, of course, we'll end with the timeline that we're on and then some of the next steps that we're currently looking at taking. And so before I kind of go into my spiel, I'd like to kind of just go ahead and get everybody to watch this 3-minute video and to kind of give us some front loading on exactly what TIA actually is.
If this works, it'll be the first time that I've seen our technology in this room work on the first crack. Let's hope we broke the streak.
Thought it was coming.
It was working, so I don't know, it was working. I was testing it out this afternoon.
So I've complained with Philip about this, and he said, we just put $50,000 in that room. So.
It's true, it tore all apart.
Save somewhere else, or you can play it from, instead of in
Is it working then? I can go to the YouTube and pull it up. Okay. Just do that real quick.
I think I've jinxed him.
think you did. It's okay. There's always, with technology, the beauty of it is there's always a workaround.
I've seen him practice.
On every vacation at a verbal home, there's someone like you who reunited the
The Teacher Incentive Fund was established by House Bill 3 during the 86th legislature and is designed to give Texas teachers access to a six-figure salary. The program's goal is to reward, retain, and recruit effective teachers while promoting equitable distribution of these teachers. Teachers are eligible to generate allotment funds for their district based on their performance. Participating districts can designate a teacher as recognized, exemplary, or master based on teacher observation, student growth, or other factors determined by the district. Teachers can also reach recognized status by obtaining a national board certification. Once a designation is achieved, it lasts for 5 years or until their national board certification expires. Annual funding allotments are based on designations, rural status of the campus, and level of student economic need. A district will receive a TIA allotment between $3,000 and $32,000 for each employed designated teacher.
That's a lot of money.
Higher funding is generated for rural and high-needs campuses. A teacher's designation will move with them if they decide to work in another district. If the teacher meets eligibility requirements at their new district, then the funds generated will be awarded to the new district during the next year's allotment cycle. Districts who want to be approved for a local teacher designation system will need to develop and implement a system based on teacher observation and student growth measures. The Texas Education Agency approves district systems based on their validity and reliability. Approval of a local designation system is a two-step process over the course of 3 school years. The district should develop their system through stakeholder engagement, solidifying the components of their system, and aligning their system to performance standards. When the district has solidified their system, they will then submit their system application to TEA for review. This is known as step 1 of the approval process. Upon approval of their application, they will begin their data capture year. This year represents the first year districts are implementing their system and capturing the teacher observation and student growth data. This year also represents a district's cohort letter. For example, the first data capture year was 2018 to 2019 and represents cohort A. After capturing their data in the data capture year, in the following school year, the district will complete step 2 of the approval process by submitting data from the previous school year along with their proposed designations to Texas Tech University for data validation. TEA will then review the outcomes of the data validation and the application to determine final approval. If approved, the district will be approved to issue designations. Designated teachers who are employed by the district and meet eligibility requirements will generate an allotment for their district. 90% of the funds generated must be used for compensation of teachers employed at the campus where the designated teacher works. Up to 10% of funds can be used for costs associated with supporting a local designation system or to support teachers in obtaining designations. Learn how to reward, retain, and recruit effective teachers in your district by visiting our website, tiatexas.org.
Okay, so that general overview, about 3.5 minutes, was condensed down from about 3.5-hour webinar. And so, don't listen to YouTube commercials anymore. Okay, so essentially what we got done was watching, like I said, 3.5-hour webinar overview in about 3.5 minutes, capturing the essential elements of the timeline and where we're going to be going with TIA as we are right now. As you saw, there was about cohort A through about G. We are cohort F. So our data capture year is 23-24. Okay, and as we saw in the video, there are 2 ways for a teacher to earn a designation. The one way and the kind of majority way is through the local designation system. That's what we, the district, gets to decide on what that looks like according to following the parameters and rules that TA set forth. And then the other way is through the National Board Certification. Looking at the first way, the local teacher designation system, Within this designation system, there are two key areas. The first area being teacher observation, which as a district, we will use T-Test. That is our official observation system, so we will continue using that as our measuring tool. And then to actually measure teacher effectiveness, that requires us looking at student growth. And that is something that as a district, we get to decide on what we will measure, whether we will decide on a specific program or a specific company. For instance, as a district currently, we use NWEA MAP for progress monitoring, student achievement, and so that could be a potential option for us to look at that test and that program for TIA. And so as we also heard in the video, no matter what we end up deciding on, it is crucial that the application shows evidence of validity and reliability. And so just more specifically about what all are the components that have to be put into the designation system. And this is, again, part of the application checklist that will have to be completed before we're able to submit our application for TA approval. We have to have a rationale, a system development, and stakeholder engagement. And so this process will require lots of collaboration. We will then, from our stakeholder engagement, have to decide on weighting of the performance measures. Then we will have to determine how to strongly calibrate teacher observation systems. And so far this school year, Mr. Van Matre has helped us implement OARS, which has been a tool that the campus administrators are currently going through to help their instructional capacity for calibration. So we're already getting that process started. And then, like we said, student growth measures. The data that we're going to be reviewing will be focused on measuring student growth. And then after we do all that, one of our jobs still is to comprise a spending plan that is transparent and explicitly lays out how the allotment works and how the funding would work for specific teachers on specific campuses, depending on number of economically disadvantaged students. And then, of course, we'll talk a little bit later about the campuses and how that funding works for campus. And then, of course, how do we make all this work? How do we ensure that the application we're submitting is successful and approved? We will be relying on district support. Currently, again, that is part of TA's recommendation and strong recommendation to have district support. And so we currently are partnering with Garrett Landry. He is a consultant with Steady State Impact Strategies, and he is kind of the guru behind TIA, and has been a part of this process since the very beginning, who has a prior relationship with Mr. Van Matre through his TIA experience. And so he'll be looking to support us here. And we're very excited to have him on board helping us through this process because, like I said, he's a guru, he's an expert, he knows all the ins and outs. So he'll be guiding us through this and will be helping us through some of the troubleshooting parts where we might get hung up on, but he'll help us through all that. Yes, sir.
Quick question, Dr. White. Is this like the weighting of performance measures, is that unique to TM, or is that something that's established already?
It's established through the application process. So anybody looking to become part of the teacher incentive allotment has to follow those criteria.
Is it strictly voluntary for the teachers, or is it?
Voluntary as part of being a part of the process,
Yeah.
or?
Or to be, so this is per teacher, right?
Well, it's by the district because the application that gets submitted is for the district, and as so, like if we are approved, all teachers qualify. I'm not.
But that's the point. Or do the teachers have to? Because they're going to have to do more, right?
Well, to be clear, the way we write the application and part of our decision making, which of course will include all of our stakeholders and a committee that will be comprised of all the stakeholder groups. That's something that we get to decide on as far as like the first phase, if you want to look at it as part of phases. Cohort F, first phase, we'll have to decide of who of all the teachers that we have and all the subjects that we teach and of those tested subjects or non-tested subjects, who kind of will be part of that first phase, that first roll-in.
There's no extra work for the teacher.
Okay.
They're evaluated based on their normal evaluation that they would have anyway. And then usually in the first year, you choose easier subject areas to evaluate, such as STAR-tested, EOC. What makes it a little bit more difficult is when you get into the non-tested areas and trying to develop a matrix to evaluate student growth in that domain.
To measure it.
And that's where the student measures come in, the student growth measures that we get to decide. But of course, like through that committee process, we'll have various stakeholders from all of these different areas. And so that'll be part of the committee work, is making those decisions.
And the committee would comprise of the administrators that do the evaluations anyway? of
It'll
these
comprise
teachers?
everybody. Any stakeholder group will be a part of that process. One of the other key areas that we need to be mindful of is the partnership with Texas Tech. As required by policy, Texas Tech has entered into agreement with TA, and they will be help support the data monitoring, the validity and reliability of the data, because that's key, which is why we're kind of going through this calibration process through OARS, and we will continue that similar process into the following years, so that again, as we're capturing our data, it's consistent and can be verified by TEA. Moving away a little bit from the local designation system into the other area where teachers can earn a designation, which is in the National Board Certification. This process is a bit more extensive and complex, but definitely worth our teachers' while if they would like to go through this. This process does take about 3 years to complete and requires teachers to master 4 components. Of those 4, there are 3 different types of portfolios that they will have to complete. And then they will have to take 1 assessment that they will be required to pass as well. And then if they can do all those things, then they will become an NBC certified teacher, which automatically qualifies them at the recognized designation. So it puts them right in the middle automatically if they were able to earn the certification.
What will be contained in one of those portfolios?
Part of their artifacts and what they're working on as a teacher in the classroom. And so a lot of it will be unique to them based on the program, like what subject they teach and kind of where they're at currently in their career. But I would have to look a little bit more specifically at the criteria, because some of it can be a bit nuanced depending on who's kind of going through that program. Moving on to the next topic is allotment funding. And just to not get too down into the weeds, because this allotment funding is a bit complex as far as how they kind of determine, and we'll talk a little bit about the details of the students behind the funding process that really drives how much is designated for teachers. But generally speaking, we have 3 key areas based on the 3 designations available. There is a base formula that each is assigned, and then depending on the multiplier, which then kind of brings in the students, and then looking at the student demographic based on whether or not they're economically disadvantaged or not economically disadvantaged, that's where you'll start seeing the weight come in as far as who will get more and who may get less. Again, those teachers who teach more economically disadvantaged students will get more, versus teachers who do not teach as many economically disadvantaged students, they will receive less. And so that's kind of just the way the formula is structured. Looking at it specifically from the student, yes.
It is really based on the, kids in the seats and
Yes.
not necessarily the campus level?
Well, it looks at both ways, which is why the formula is a bit complex, because it takes into consideration both. And I'll get to the second slide, the next slide, which will kind of help you kind of clear up that a little bit. But before we get there, just so it's clear, there are 2 ways of looking at the students from a teacher incentive allotment standpoint. Again, those students who do not qualify for state compensatory education services, and those who do. And so those who do, depending on their census tier and where they are at currently in that census tier, since there are 5 tiers, those students are grouped into 1 of 5 of those tiers. And the more economically disadvantaged a student is, the more weight that they will carry. And as we've kind of discussed already, students at rural schools will be assigned to a tier that is 2 tiers higher than their assigned comp ed tier. And so I know this graphic right here is a little bit small, But if you want to look at it from a general tier to designation, so that it just stays clean, you don't look at the actual number of students being taught by the teacher, you can kind of get a sense of where the money is and how it falls. And also, depending on whether or not the students are at a rural campus or a non-rural campus. And I will get to the slide next that shows the breakdown of the funding by campus. Currently, we have one rural campus, and that is ACC.
Why is that?
That's just because of where they're located. It's based on the location, and the state determines all that. But as a district, we are non-rural. So as a district, we don't qualify, but we do have one campus that does. And so those teachers on that campus will receive a little bit more based on that designation. And what I mean by that is, if we were to have been a TIA district this year, and again, funding is lagging, so it's based on the year prior. If we were to look at school year 21-22 funding averages, and if we were a TIA district this year, this is kind of what the money breakdown would look like.
So the payout that I'm familiar with, that I was working with, we hit the 27,000. And our payout was that the teacher would receive 75% of that, and that the 15% would be spread out to every teacher in the campus, and then the district would receive 10% for managing it. And we decided to take the 10% and help with the taxes that were deducted from that. So all of the funding went to teachers and subsidizing some of their benefits. And then as a district, you can choose, I'm assuming it hasn't changed, to have a monthly payout or a lump sum in July.
That has not changed, and that's kind of part of the compensation plan, if we want to include that language or kind of already have that as a predetermined choice for them, so that everybody just stays on one payment plan instead of having multiple payment plans for people depending on what their choice was. We can make that decision if we'd like, or the committee can make that decision if they'd like.
So can you explain to me how we got these numbers again? So
Yes, I got them from the
tier base.
website.
Huh?
I got them from the website.
Okay.
But no, specifically, it's based on the student point value average. So when we see primary a little bit higher than high school, that's because overall they have more economically disadvantaged students
Yeah,
than
so
high school does.
that was, I guess that was my original question. So is it who the teacher is actually teaching, or the economic disadvantage of the campus?
It's a little bit of both. It's a little bit of both. So to look at the entire campus, for instance, because ACC has predominantly, and based on their location, they get that designation. So automatically, regardless, those teachers will get a higher rate than those campuses that are not. And then we have to look specifically at the actual students and which teachers are serving which students. And then we can kind of get a sense of specifically how much they will be given. But those are kind of the designation markers. So depending on where they fall, they can't get any less than that. Does that make sense? So those are like thresholds. So that bare minimum, if you are here, you're a TIA teacher, and based on your performance at the end of the year, how much you grew your students, you would get a minimum of whichever that designation you fell into.
And you said that all teachers in the classroom qualify for this, or do they have to be certified teachers?
They have to be certified teachers. So that's a bit of a synonym, certified teacher, teachers that are certified. But then, like I said before, depending on how we roll this out in our first year, if we want to be more strategic about just targeting a specific group of teachers based on a common thread, such as STAR or a content, that's generally how it's done in phases. It's very difficult to try to do all this for everybody at the same time, because like what Mr. Van Matry said, we're all kind of using different student growth measures. Generally speaking, you start with STAR, because that's a statewide performance measure that we can all agree on, and that's been in place for a long time. But when we start looking at teachers from non-state tested subjects like CTE, there isn't a state performance measure of any kind, so that would have to be something that locally we develop and assign and kind of go from there and manage. So that will require a little bit more work because we'd have to kind of determine the measure that we'd be using, whereas with, for instance, grades 4 through 8 RLA for ELA, for English and Language Arts, that is already determined for us, so we kind of just get to skip to the next step, which is calibration and making sure that the data we send is reliable for those teachers.
And do we have a projection yet of how long that will take?
As far as being as far as like just.
You know, you say you're gonna do it a little bit at a time, these teachers, those teachers, do we have a projection yet, or is that something?
That is something that, as a committee, when we come back in January, that'll be one of the first tasks of that committee. We will meet for the first time, and that'll be something that we discuss in that meeting and begin looking to make decisions on. And so that'll be something that we kick off with, and that'll be one of the first things that that committee has to tackle, is that decision.
Yeah, good deal, because that would be good for us to know.
Yep.
Awesome.
And just to kind of wrap things up, these are the essential factors that will go into the process. Again, we will make sure that we develop a local designation system. We will then, of course, be mindful of the additional funding that we receive and putting a plan in place that matches that. And then again, understanding that rural and high needs, which also equals to higher economically disadvantaged students, there will be more funding for those students and those campuses. Again, 90% of TIA has to be spent on teacher compensation. That percentage can be broken down further, but as long as it's being spent on teachers, it can be done. And then in partnership with Texas Tech University, and of course, they will be supporting the teacher observation and the calibration of that data to make sure that each teacher is being observed and evaluated fairly and equitably so that there isn't any skewing of any kind. That process will also be required, and that will help us get to the final stages for overall application approval from TEA. And just to finish the presentation, again, next school year is our official data capture year, which makes the current year we are in our application year. And so currently, our cohort F application was posted in November. And so here we are in December, bringing this to y'all as a report. In January, we will come back from our break, nicely rested and ready to hit the ground running with our first committee meeting in the first week or two in January, which will allow us to kickstart the application. And we will submit that application sometime in March, maybe possibly early April, but definitely several weeks before the actual application is due. And then once the summer hits and we're into school year 23-24, that's when we really begin the calibration process to ensure that the data we send to Texas Tech is clean, it's reliable, it's valid, and that will take us into the third year, which is the final designation, the final application approval, which takes us into the next year, where eventually teachers will be paid out based on their designation. So like the video said, it's a 3-year process. Are there any questions? Yes.
What does House Bill 3, I guess, want to happen after 5 years? Like, is the school building up too fun?
I don't think they've addressed that. House Bill 3 is law, so the legislature would have to change the law in order for there to be changes.
But like cohort A, what year are they of their 5 years?
Well, I was cohort C, and my teachers were paid in July. So you do the math.
I think it started in 18-19. That was cohort A.
So they're still in the middle of it.
I would think. Millions have been paid, millions of dollars. And our teachers, I think we have a responsibility, not only as a board, but as an administration, to look at every conceivable avenue to increase teacher salary.
Couldn't agree more.
So I would like to add to that, like, who's going to be monitoring so we don't miss deadlines? Because that'd be catastrophic, right? We cannot miss deadlines for our teachers.
We won't miss any deadlines.
Okay. So at some point, we need, and you're very you're very sharp. I've noticed so far in my short time here, so I fully trust that. But that's good, because we need to make sure we don't miss these opportunities. But we've missed it, obviously, for a few years, that's over and done with. But now that we're on the roll, that's awesome that y'all are prepared to not miss deadlines.
We're actually at a really great spot for this because last year we were able to complete ourselves as a district of innovation, which will take me kind of into our next topic with some policy updates. But having been able to complete that and just getting everybody used to a collaborative process with multiple meetings and stakeholder engagement and hearings and putting just people through a process like that, everybody kind of understands how that went and worked. And so we're primed and ready to go for being a part of Cohort F. And like I said, hitting the ground running in January of '23 when we come back to get this process started.
Exciting.
It's exciting, it's very exciting.
You did a great job, and yeah, this is very exciting for TM.
So it's a game changer.
Yeah, it's more than a game changer. This is awesome.
I think so too. Okay, tonight's the Dr. White show. Yeah, a
One more
question? Yes. Oh, you had more, I'm sorry.
Yes. Is there anything we can do to get teachers paid prior to, I guess,
No.
us going through the data capture? We can't get them board certified in order to skip a lot of this stuff.
That's there's less than 500 Texas teachers that are currently national board certified. It's a lengthy process that I know of no way to accelerate that. I'm not saying there isn't, but I don't know of any.
Okay. And then
It's specifically designed to take about 3 years because they move you through, almost like being in a doctoral program where in this semester you do this, next semester you do this. So it's very structured, very regimented. And on purpose, because it's really to kind of, it's like the upper echelon of a designation. There's a reason why there's only 500 teachers in the state of Texas that has it.
I also heard that, okay, let's say I'm a teacher at a different campus that already has their local designation, and I'm getting my extra money there. Now I'm trying to come to TM, but we yet do not have ours. I would not get my money because TM
That's
is,
incorrect.
okay.
The money follows the teacher. However, it hurt me with some of the people that wanted to come to TM because, not very many, 2 or 3 top-notch teachers that were making a $27,000 a year stipend from the state.
Right.
Correct. If they would have come to TM, that would have been reduced $10,000, and they just decided not to take the hit.
Okay, so that already, okay.
So what happens when we get certified and one of our teachers leaves? I know it goes with them, but, I mean, we can replace that with another teacher, or, I mean, this,
The money follows the teacher.
okay.
So if.
So it doesn't matter,
if
all our
anybody-
teachers could be classified, I mean, all our teachers are able to get this money if they qualify for it, right?
That's correct.
That's, okay.
And if they
There's
leave,
not certain slots
if
for.
they leave, the money follows them.
Like that.
Now, I don't know the complex formula on how the state determines how much money they have to pay out. I do know it changes from year to year. We don't know, the data that he presented to you is lag data. The state makes those computations late in the game. They designate the teachers, they get official notification in April, and they still don't know exactly what the official payout is. Now, what my experience was, the payout was almost the exact same from the year before, but it's a year-to-year thing.
And then, once the program's implemented, how quickly can a teacher go through the steps? Can someone already like skip to exemplary or mastery? Or is it
They're
take time to
evaluated
go-
year to year. If Ms. Villalobos is designated as a recognized teacher, the following year's data can bring you up, it can't bring you down. If Paul is not designated, he misses it, his next year's data, he can qualify. Is that consistent with what you?
But I think what she's saying, you can't go from recognized to master. It's a staged process, it's a stage gated process, okay.
But there's new data every year.
Right, so each year you get another
Yeah,
shot.
get another
at it.
shot at meeting that criteria. What will torpedo the district is inflated evaluations.
Yes.
Absolutely.
It has
That's
to
the
be,
number one.
it has to be calibrated with student growth.
And that was precisely my question at the beginning. Is that going to be, monitored by the state as everybody in the same program?
Yes,
The
that's where
person from
Texas Tech
Texas Tech,
University
right?
will come in. They will review and ensure that our data is calibrated, it is valid, it's reliable, which is why district support is so strongly encouraged by TA to ensure that we do have a partnership or a technical assistant provider. Garrett Landry is our guy. He will make sure that all that is being done properly and according to the way Texas Tech and TA expects that data to come in. And so that, to me, if we have that in place, I'm not concerned one bit with how we go through that process next year to turn in that data. Because that's the one filter that if we don't do that right, it'll kick that application back and we'll have to start all over again. So as long as we can get past that threshold, everything else should be pretty smooth sailing from there.
Yeah,
Nice.
my professor at Tech is in charge of like doing all this, so I was gonna, we've already talked a lot about it. Last question. So we're talking about starting with STAR testing teachers.
That's the
And-
easiest.
That's
Yeah,
just kind of where
no, I
you would start. That's
completely
kind of where you
agree.
look at first.
Yeah, I completely agree. Does that start our 5-year clock? Or does the 5-year clock start with each individual teacher?
It would start with that group.
That cohort,
So if I'm a CT teacher and we don't develop a plan for me to be evaluated till year 2
you'll be a
or
year
3.
behind. You'll be a year behind.
Okay,
Let me tell you a downside of this. Traditionally, when the calendar hits, I don't know, late January, early February, the STAR teachers, state assessments, will start requesting Kim to leave her 7th grade history class, which isn't tested, to come to my 7th grade reading class for extra tutoring and to raise the scores. If I'm a 7th grade Texas history teacher and I've got a performance goal of her making progress in 7th grade history, I'm not going to be as reluctant. I'm not going to be as eager to say, Kim, you can go next door to get extra English instruction because I need you here because I want to qualify for the teacher incentive allotment. I never thought of that when we were going through the system, but it's become a reality, and it's something that we're going to have to, knowing that in advance will probably help us navigate that concern. But that's really the only.
Well, couldn't the advisory period help with
it
that
can- you-
situation?
You can structure
Exactly.
the master schedule to deal with that, but that's something that will, the pros overwhelmingly outweigh what I just told you.
Yeah, that's awesome.
yeah, 100% love the program. Wish we were in cohort A. This is one of the, I guess,
At least B.
Texas.
At least B.
At least
I
B.
can
Okay.
understand not, but at least B, come on.
So really glad we are getting into the program now. This was one of, I guess, the line items on the Texas Like financial overview that was a 0 for TM, along with the mentor-mentee program, which I would like to hear about more later on. And 54 different equations that fund a school district. So I'm glad we're checking off one of those boxes. And I mean, when we build new school districts, if this is longer than 5 years, should we look at putting them in rural areas? I don't know. The end.
Any other questions? I think we got them all answered.
Okay. Madam President, members of the board, as you know, the district has transitioned into a district of innovation, and with that comes some policy considerations that Dr. White's going to walk you through at the recommendation of TASB. And these are first reading only.
Yes, this is first reading, so this is everybody's opportunity to make sure that they're aware of the policy updates and what updates are actually happening and what impacts that could have on just our local policy period. And again, these updates were made in consultation with our legal counsel based on how our District of Innovation plan was created and approved. And so tonight is just making sure that our policy remains updated and current and congruent with legal and, of course, our DOI plan itself. And so each of these.
Let me stop you just for a second, just a 15-second overview for the new trustees. There's two types of policies. There's legal and local. Legal, you have no oversight on. It has to be done. Local, you do. Normally, we get all the policy recommendations from TASB and what they call an update. And we will give that to you. We'll do first reading. You'll have a month to read it, and then we'll bring it back to you on second reading, and then you vote on policy. So I just didn't know if you had that context.
Awesome.
Okay. And with that context, we just currently did go through a policy update, TASB 118, or I think it was 119. And so as we were able to do that, that's when we looked at updating our local policy for DOI. And so first we did this one, now we're coming to you all tonight with the first reading of the policies that are directly impacted by our District of Innovation plan. And so when you continue to read past the cover sheet, you can see the proposed revisions and kind of just having that compared against what was currently in place and what will be updated. And so that's there for you all to review. And what will happen next, we will have a second reading, and that's when discussion and approval can happen at that time. And so as we're kind of just familiarizing ourselves through this first reading, again, our DOI plan, each of those policies, that was a particular policy that our DOI plan targeted to create flexibility as a local innovation district to decide how we would like to have that look and be in operation for us at TM. And so again, as we made our adjustments to our DOI plan, our legal counsel, in collaboration with our team, made those updates, again, to align to how our DOI plan was created. Does anybody have any questions?
What was, I guess, I don't know, your opinion on the attendance provision? I feel like they crossed a whole lot of stuff out.
Yes.
And I understand why,
And again, that becomes flexibility. And so locally, we can look at it from a mastery of learning perspective rather than get yourself in a seat and do your time perspective. Legally, the 90-10 rule is still in effect because that's a legal thing, right? We can't change legal policy. However, locally, depending on our attendance committee, depending on principal approval, there's a process that we can allow students to go through if there are extenuating circumstances. One of the reasons why we looked at this as a district was because of COVID-19 and some out of the ordinary and extraordinary exceptions that we felt were out of our students' control, and that depending on close contact or having the virus, there's no possible way for them to be in attendance to get that seat time. However, that doesn't mean they still can't learn remotely. And so that was really what was driving the conversations at the time. And as a result, we kept it in place because, again, COVID or not COVID, we still have students that fall into that extenuating circumstance category. And as long as we have a process in place through our principal approval and our committee approval, students have that as an option. But at the end of the day, regardless of seat time or not, our ultimate goal is for students to master the content. Having seat time and the 90-10 rule helps us give us leverage to make that end goal a reality. But sometimes the seat time or the 90-10 can't be achieved, or there are just things in the way that prevent that from happening, which then we don't want to lose sight of the overall goal, which is still having our students learn and master material. So this policy update and change really just keeps it about mastery learning and what do we really want our students to walk away with having achieved and been successful at.
I also, I know in our DOI plan, we talked about teachers, certified teachers having a minimum year of requirement, like 3 in business, or I forgot what, 3 or 5. But it doesn't say that in our policy.
Correct.
Why?
Because that is something that can be flexed in and out depending on each teacher's criteria, because it's eventually we look at our criteria as minimum thresholds. However, if there is still a need, or we're still having a vacuum or a void and we're needing to fill it, the committee can still make that ultimate decision. Again, it's really based on the committee process. Those are just variables that we are going to look at to consider if we do have multiple candidates that do meet the criteria. But if we don't, we have one, but they're really, really solid, and they're the only one, but they don't have 3 years, they have 2.5. We're not gonna allow that 3 years to be the reason why we can't move them through.
I really loved how the head count policy change spelled out how it would go through you for approval if we had to increase a class, and this is like the communication that would happen. But it doesn't say everything you just said about minimum years required in this policy. And I think it'd be
For the teacher certification?
Yes.
Well, there's a reason. Say specifically so that we don't lock ourselves into something that we don't want to do or we're bound to. Again, when it comes to teacher certification, it's really hard to create a one-size-fits-all kind of parameter or guideline, especially when we're looking into key areas that are difficult to staff like CTE.
Yeah, I
So
understand.
each staff member is so unique and different with their qualifications and criteria. We would hate to write something that now we've done ourselves a disservice because we've eliminated ourselves from a viable candidate, all because they had 2.5 years and not 3 years. But they were our only candidate,
Yes.
and the committee agreed that this was the best candidate for us. That's what we were wanting to avoid.
I completely understand. It'd be cool if those, I guess, not exemptions, but those one-offs were spelled out, the process we would take, as in the over 24 head count, how it was spelled out.
Okay.
Yeah.
What I will say a little bit more about the actual teacher certification, because that was the hardest one to write. We did kind of fall in line with how Corpus Christi ISD wrote theirs, and it took them 2 years as a committee to write that particular policy. So when we were looking at.
In there?
Yes, in
Okay.
Corpus Christi ISD, if you want to compare DOI plans for
Well,
teacher certification.
I like the DOI
Okay.
plan. I'm talking about the,
Oh, you're talking about the actual policy itself and
Yes,
how it's written?
yes.
Okay, that's not where you would have that. That's more of a administrative regulation. I'm sorry, I was confused on the
Yeah,
question.
sorry.
Okay, so like
no,
Mr.
I've read the
Van
DOI
Matry said-
plan, and I agree with everything written
Okay.
in the DOI plan. I wish these policies were slightly more spelled out, such as
I see what you're saying.
More specific.
So
yes.
with local policy, it's actually recommended that you don't completely spell it out that way, just so that policy speaking, you've got enough wiggle room to kind of fall in line with the kind of one size fits all. But what you're talking about more specifically would fall into the administrative regulation category, which is kind of like at the next level, if you
Okay.
look at it from like a tiered legal, local, and then going down into administrative regulations, that's where you're talking about. That's where you would find that.
Any other questions?
This is the first reading. There will be a second.
I'm okay, yeah.
So like Mr. Van Matry said, this was report only and there's first reading only, so no board action is needed. The next item on the agenda is number 4, and it's to discuss and consider approval of remote conferencing instruction waiver.
Madam President, members of the board, we have a student that has a significant illness that wants to, in lieu of homebound instruction, wants to be Zoomed into the classroom. The Texas Education Agency requires board approval for a waiver in order to do that and receive funding. That's what this is about. Dr. White?
And just more specifically on that note, one of the reasons why we're bringing this request tonight for your approval is that, one, it's according to the policy that if this student's art committee requests this accommodation, part of the accommodation request is to bring it to y'all's attention for it to be approved, so that from y'all's approval, we get to move forward to the next step, which is actually submitting the application for TA's approval. So it's a three-step process. First step is having the ARD, which then brings forth the recommendation, which has happened, which is why we're here tonight. Step 2, for y'all's approval, in order to move into step 3, the final part, which is TA's approval. So it just moves into that order. And so we're just here as part of that second phase. And depending on whether or not you all approve, tomorrow I will get with Yolando Alvaro, our special education director, to ensure that the application is written appropriately and properly and submitted timely. And we should be able to get our results back within the next 2 to 3 business days, so that we can notify that student if that application for this request was approved or not. And again, because the student is requesting more than 20 days of remote instruction, that's another reason why we're bringing this approval request to your attention tonight.
And that's just for this school year.
Just for this school year, yes.
So it would have to be renewed, it would have to be approved again for the next school year.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there any discussion, any questions? Do you have a recommendation?
Yes, ma'am. It is the administration's recommendation that the board approve the remote conferencing waiver request effective December 13th, 2022.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
All right, Leon makes the motion, and Jen seconds it. All in favor? None opposed, motion carries 6-0. The next item on the agenda is item number 5, discuss and consider the approval of Student Health Advisory Council members.
Madam President, members of the board, this was a trustee request that's made its way onto the agenda regarding a citizen to be appointed. Dr. White oversees the SHOC committee, so I'm going to let him carry this forward.
And so just to keep this brief, since this is pretty straightforward, there was a request from a stakeholder from the school year to no longer be a member of the committee. And as such, one of our trustees brought forth a recommendation for a replacement. And therefore, here is why we are presenting this for y'all's approval tonight, just to make a seat update on the SHAC committee for this school year.
Anybody have any questions?
Am I allowed to make a comment? Yeah, Sylvia comes a whole lot, and she speaks at public comment consistently. And I think it would be really good for her to be on the committee to, I guess, push agenda items to the board that can actually be voted on and passed and implemented in the school district. And really admire all your activism and keep it up.
Any other discussion? Any other recommendation?
We do. Madam President, members of the board, it is the administration's recommendation that the board approve the appointment of Ms. Sylvia Henderson to the School Health Advisory Council member to fill the vacancy as presented.
Do we have a motion?
I motion for it.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
2 seconds.
Oh, go ahead. Take it.
So Denise made the motion and Leo seconded it. All in favor? And the motion carries 6-0.
Congratulations.
Thank you,
Thank you so much, Ms. Henderson.
thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, moving on to item number 6. This will be a report for a dual language immersion two-way program.
Madam President, members of the board, this is another new initiative. You're going to see a few of these coming up. This is the latest. The next one will probably be the profile of a TM graduate, what we want that individual skills to be marketable. This is really, really exciting for me because I think we can do a better job of providing instruction to our Spanish-only students, as well as providing a gateway for English-dominant students to learn Spanish at a very early age. It's an opportunity for us to be a leader in this initiative, and we've got some really good people that are working on this. Ms. Moody?
Hi, I'm Kenna Moody. I'm Assistant Director for Curriculum and Instruction. And so we have been tasked with implementing dual language immersion in July of this coming year. So
start the school year.
Since the beginning of the school year.
I'm sorry, let's get it going.
So we're excited, and the committee that we put together, we kind of needed that kick in the pants.
You should have seen them.
Because we were all
When
like.
do you want this, Mr. Bevan?
Yes, we were all a little hesitant to get something going, and then we met with our teachers. And our teachers were just so excited about implementing it. So we have, at the primary is where we're looking at starting. Well, let me go through the presentation, then I'll kind of go through some of the other stuff. Well. Okay, so what is DLI? It's dual language immersion, and there's 2 types of dual language that you can have, one way or two way. One way is you're just teaching one native language, a second language. We are looking at potentially doing, thank you, a two-way immersion. So we are teaching English proficient students Spanish, and we are teaching Spanish proficient students English. So we would engage in a two-way. This is just a bunch of mumbo, but I wanted you to have access to it because this is the actual text education code that came out of House Bill 3. And it's chapter 89, if you want to look it up. I've spent the last 3 weeks scouring it. It's very, very interesting stuff, so if you're into it. But what does it mean really for us and our kids? These are the goals and the benefits that we think implementing it in our district will have. It'll strengthen the native language for English native speakers as well as Spanish native speakers. Both sets of students will develop a second language and become biliterate. The goal is by 5th grade, by the end of 5th grade year. They will be completely fluent in both social language of a second language as well as academic languages. CLAPS or CALPS, or there's an acronym for that academic language and then for social language as well. It'll help students build cultural partnerships because they work in tandem with each other. They're acquiring a second language together in the same classroom. It'll capitalize on the strengths to develop literacy. So what we currently see and what research has now come out and said is that the bilingual early exit transitional, which is what we are, that's what we provide currently. We provide predominant instruction in English language in English, and then expect students to jump into it and kind of, we scaffold things for them so that they can acquire the language more quickly. However, research is now showing that if you will capitalize on their native language strengths, acquire the reading language arts, how to read in their native language, that will diminish the gap of learning that we're seeing for our bilingual students. So, for English language learners, the process of acquiring a second language does different cognitive things for them and increases their cognitive ability. So it's still content-based. They're still learning all of the TEKS at a very rigorous level. And we're going to partner with experts. We're not doing all of this work on our own. And then it's scientifically proven to mitigate that learning gap that gets developed at the early age. So why DLI and why now? According to TEA research, it minimizes the learning gaps, and it is the only program that fosters the native language. So whether that native language be English or that native language be Spanish, it capitalizes on that. And traditionally, monolingual Spanish speakers, they don't want their kids coming to school and speaking Spanish. They want them, no, you're going to speak English. But this program, it allows kids to capitalize on that ability as Spanish speakers to not miss out on first grade, second grade reading instruction because they don't understand what you're saying in the classroom. So that's how it mitigates that learning gap there. And then this would essentially, there's, compliance for TEA. This exceeds compliant expectations, and you'll see in just a second how TEA is pushing districts to do this. And then it helps them become more marketable in the future. And then language acquisition is proven to help cognitive ability. So how and what? Because it is expensive, you will essentially be adding a bilingual teacher as you go up in the cohort, because I'll talk about the phase-in just a minute. But TEA, so all bilingual students get a 0.1% weighted ADA. They are giving you a 0.15. So they're essentially generating 50% more funding than they did before. In addition to that, English proficient EP kids are also generating a 0.05 funding source. So that's a 0.05 weighted ADA that we did not generate before. So any English proficient student that is in a dual language program is now generating additional weighted ADA. So it kind of pays for itself by adding those EP students, and then the bilingual students, those parents that might opt out of bilingual because they don't want their kid to be in bilingual or they want their kid to have other opportunities, they might stay in bilingual, and that would generate the weighted ADA for them too. And then this is the TEA, this is where TEA published it. And you can tell when TEA wants you to do something because they put it in PowerPoints, they put it in FAQs, they put it in House bills, they put it in everything possible. So there are multiple sources of where funding for this program is discussed and reiterated. And so these are two of just, some screenshots that TEA published, and it is proven to be more effective than a transitional or ESL model. What will it cost out of pocket? Right now, we're looking at about $20,000 to get started, which we have that in the current bilingual program, which is, we can do that. It's not gonna be out of, it's not gonna be crazy for us to reallocate some things and do that. And that initial cost is to partner with Gomez and Gomez. If you do any research on dual language immersion, that company is gonna be the company that pulls up. They have 700 schools in Texas alone. And so we are going to partner with them. I met with Dr. Gomez on Thursday of last week, and he is already sending us, here's dates for trainings, here's, everything that you need to know. We sent him a laundry list of questions that apply only to TM. What do we do if we don't have a kid that's EB but doesn't necessarily have a Spanish dominance? They're just EB, and they're not speaking Spanish in the home. They're not really speaking Spanish in the school, but when they came into pre-K, they didn't have a language. They didn't speak. And so what do you do with them? Because you don't necessarily want to educate them in Spanish. That's why dual language works, because they're going to be learning in English and also in Spanish. So as the program grows, we'll need classrooms to be outfitted for Spanish. There's Gomez and Gomez has a very particular model that they use. Everything is color coordinated, red and blue. There's language of the day. There's all sorts of things that come with Gomez and Gomez, and they've got lists on their website for classroom. This is what you need to have your classroom outfitted in. So all of that would be close to around $20,000 with the partnership to outfit the first 3 classrooms. Why Gomez and Gomez? Like I said, they're the leading consulting firm for DLI. They'll provide all the necessary professional development, the initial leadership training, and then they'll come throughout the school year to also do 2 days of training on the job training with teachers in the classrooms. They'll also do classroom reviews with feedback for teachers and administrative staff. And then they'll support the implementation. Like I sent them a question, do you have any questionnaires for parent interest? You know, because I want to make sure that it's research-based and solid. I don't have anything right now, but I can get you something. So, you know, he's going to support that program implementation as well. And then, most importantly, they're going to provide that meaningful feedback quickly. And then who all will it benefit? Our current EB students. They will still be labeled EB, but they'll also be, their program type will be dual language. So they will not have the opportunity, this is a big difference, they will not have the opportunity to test out of EB until after 5th grade. Whereas currently our bilingual program, if they meet the exit criteria, they can exit bilingual prior to, or in 3rd grade. Once they pass their STAR test, they pass TELPUS, yes ma'am.
Quick question, do the parents have the opportunity to opt out of having their children in a dual, in this dual program?
They can do parent denial. They can, even prior to dual language, they can parent deny in bilingual also. The kids are still coded as bilingual until they meet exit criteria. They just do not receive any services. They don't go into a bilingual program, and the same will continue. If parent denies services of dual language, they would meet those same, it would follow the same.
Another question, are we gonna have to look for recruiting dual language teachers?
The certification of bilingual covers dual language. It's the exact same certification. So currently, if no staff leaves in our first phase in, we will not need to hire any additional teachers.
We do have an emerging partnership with Texas A&M Kingsville.
Oh, yes.
As you know, Dr. Villarreal is the new dean of the College of Education. So she has assured me that any bilingual student teacher will come to TM.
I think educating the parents will be the biggest asset of getting this program off and running, because both sides benefit from this program, but it's going to be educating the parents on how both your Spanish-speaking and your English-speaking kids can benefit from this.
Right. And Dr. Gomez has offered to come and lead our parent meetings so that he can articulate exactly how it's going to benefit and how the parents are also going to benefit from that inclusion in that program. So he's going to come and do an initial parent meeting for us. I believe that's in the cost that is quoted around $20,000. I think it's actually less than that because he gave us a discount because we're a smaller district. And so we won't be 30 teachers coming to a training. We're going to be, 8, 9, 10 teachers going to a training. So he's included that in part of what we're going to do with his partnership, is that parent, and we completely agree. The administrative staff for both primary and intermediate, that's their big concern too.
Can you talk a little bit about teacher buy-in? Is people going to be forced to be in this program, or are they going to want to be in the program?
So we initially, that was, and I think we, you saw our faces when we were, that was our initial concern. We had a meeting with all of the principals, Mr. Manmitri, it was our directors and principals meeting where he mentioned, I want this in July. And we knew it was coming. We were just exploring options at that time. And Laura, Ms. Davila and I both looked at each other and we were like, oh, our teachers are gonna panic. And so she went the next day and met with all of her bilingual teachers. There was one that was considering retirement. She's no longer considering retirement because she's excited about the program. 3 of the 6 teachers that would potentially implement in this school year, this coming school year, have all been in dual language districts and have run dual language classrooms. So only 3 of the 6 have not. And those 3 that have were just so excited about it that the 3 that have not are excited about learning. So we don't feel like teacher buy-in is gonna be an issue, but they are gonna be critical in the next phase of what we're gonna be doing, which is writing handbooks, writing criteria, writing entrance criteria, writing assessments as to what we're gonna assess and how we're gonna assess. So they'll be critical in that part of it too. Did I speak to what you?
You always do.
Okay, and then it's also good for our EP students. They're gonna have the opportunity to learn from those Spanish-speaking students and, of course, outside of school. That's gonna help them in high school. We are not currently looking at a middle school implementation of it. It is a phase-in. TEA requires that it be a phase-in. But once we get up to middle school, we've not discussed at the middle school level what that would look like. So that's something that we have quite a few years to work on. But this is our current implementation plan, and Chrissy had, because I know you can't see it up here. From December to July, these are the activities that we feel, if we meet these deadlines, we will be fine and we'll be right on track for implementation. And of course, it's gonna get fine-tuned, and it's already been edited this afternoon, that isn't up there, so it'll continue to be edited as we reach goals of implementation and deadlines and things like that. Phase in, I keep telling you phase in. We are working with Gomez and Gomez, and he has not had a critical study of our current bilingual population. We have 15 pre-K students and we have 16 kindergarten students that are currently bilingual. The phase-in grade levels would be pre-K, kinder, and first. And we may scale that back to just kindergarten and pre-K, and then implement first grade as a rolling cohort, as that cohort goes up, depending on our bilingual population and their strength in Spanish, because that kindergarten foundation, they're essentially gonna miss. TEA allows you to do it up to second grade. Once second grade hits, you cannot implement dual language because they feel like the brain is too old to acquire it easily. And so first grade is still in flux for us. We're still considering whether that's gonna be a part of phase 1 or phase 2. Phase 2 would be the roll up from pre-K and kinder. And I did wanna touch on kindergarten, pre-K, because we are gonna carry 2 dual language classrooms in pre-K, but those pre-K classrooms will be one-way Spanish only. Because if we do a cohort of EP students, then that excludes any opportunity for incoming kindergarten their following year. So all of those EP seats would already be filled with pre-K, and not everybody has the opportunity for pre-K. So pre-K will remain a one-way Spanish to English only, and then as they go to kindergarten, it will become two-way.
Okay.
Just because we didn't want to exclude kids that didn't qualify for pre-K.
Are there any studies to show whether the dual part of learning impedes a student's learning or accelerates it? Or are there any studies to determine, their progress in learning? I mean, does it hold them back some? Does it take longer for learning, or does it, accelerate by?
The only research that I've looked at, and I've been looking at TEA regulations and things, so is from Gomez and Gomez. And what Gomez and Gomez tells you, or their research shows, is that if you capitalize on their native language, you don't develop those significant gaps that we are currently developing unintentionally in kinder and first. And so essentially you're gaining back 2 years of instruction with those language kids. It doesn't necessarily speed up an English language learner, an English proficient learner. It doesn't accelerate their instruction, but it does open up an availability of cognitive skill building. So in that sense, then yes, they would be activating different parts of their brains that would, maybe be at a higher level of thinking, of cognitive ability.
Let me answer a little bit. As a person who's multilingual, I know personally that.
Yeah. I don't mean to make you stop. I'm sorry, but we have to stay with her speaking.
Yeah, sorry. But it helps the kids a lot. Sorry.
So real quick, you said we're going to skip pre-K?
No, pre-K will be dual language, but they are going to, so their RLA instruction, their reading language arts instruction, they will learn only in their native language as a one-way program.
Oh, okay.
And maybe I probably didn't articulate that very clearly. So if we allow EP students to engage in dual language in pre-K, then it's a commitment, a 5-year, 6-year commitment. So those seats would already be gone for any other EP students, because you have to have 60 to 40% ratio. So 60% Spanish acquiring and 40% English acquiring. So if we already fill all those English acquiring seats in pre-K, then we will not have availability for kindergartners. And since not everybody can participate in pre-K, we would have lost a cohort of students.
I see what you're saying, okay.
So they will still be doing dual language, they will be acquiring both languages, but their initial reading instruction, their phonics, their everything will be in their native language, whether that's dominant English or dominant Spanish, but it is most likely dominant Spanish, because that's a qualifier for pre-K.
Okay, cool.
So how many kinder classes are we starting on?
So we are looking at two kinder classes per grade level, and so this is our current number. So keep in mind the 60-40 ratio, and I think TEA is doing that so that you don't say, I'm gonna have 30 EP students and generate this additional funding.
Yeah.
I think they're trying to keep
Program
that,
control.
yeah, so that, so you have to be equivalent to your bilingual population. Our current bilingual population in pre-K is 15, so we would only essentially be able to have 13 and a half EP students in kindergarten next year.
Yeah, and so, but those kids, the 2 classrooms, they would stay the same cohort all the way through 5th grade?
All the way through 5th. Now, you would have some flexibility because you'd be able to run 2
Swap
cohorts.
them, yeah.
So like if you run into this kid is picking on my kid, or, you have some flexibility to switch there. And that's why we want to keep 2. Now, moving up, we already have 15 in pre-K. So if all of those pre-K kids come to kindergarten, we always get about 10, I would say 8 to 10 in kindergarten that enroll as EB students, as brand new kindergartners, no pre-K. And so that may eventually force us to have a 3rd bilingual classroom so that we can keep EP, so that we can keep dual language. Because if you don't, then you're gonna run out of EP spots. Because you're gonna have, you would essentially go, instead of 8 and 7 bilingual students with 8 and 6 EP students, you're gonna go 10 or 11 bilingual students and maybe only 2 or 3 EP students. So.
We would be looking to increase this program as we go.
Right.
Mr. Ametri knows how I feel about this, because the night we hired him, that was one of my questions to him, how do you feel about dual language? And it wasn't, bilingual, because you go to all these conferences and they were trying to throw bilingual language at me, and I said, no, I want dual language in our school system.
Yeah.
And, the past 2 years that I've gone to the kindergarten graduations, you can tell there's a need.
Yeah.
Because we have, 90% Spanish-speaking, kindergartners going through the system. They're gonna lose their Spanish ability to speak by 5th grade if we don't keep them 6th grade, 7th grade, as it gets more, not cool to speak Spanish. But if all your friends are speaking it
Right.
throughout the whole system, then it's okay.
Well, and as a matter of fact, our current bilingual program is to train kids to speak English proficient by 3rd grade.
Yes.
So you're essentially kind of negating their strength.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think why the research is so strong, that if you capitalize on that, then.
And me as a parent, I feel that I have failed my kids, because I got, a senior and I have a 2nd-year college kid. And although they might know a little bit of Spanish, what, they've picked up between me and their mom, but it's not what they need. They needed Spanish because for what they want to do, the income level could have been drastically increased. And that's why I was telling Mr. Ametri, we need to, when they're kids, we can't lose it anymore. We've lost it for so many years as being considered Tejanos versus, 1st-generation Mexicans from Mexico. you know, we have lost so much in it already. And as, you know, I'm a fifth generation Tejano, I really feel like I've let my kids down because they can't go through the system in Spanish because they don't know enough Spanish to get them there.
Right.
And,
Well,
you know,
and I personally have 4 kids in the district. 2 are in 2nd grade. I have a middle schooler that's in 8th grade. When she was in 2nd grade, we were at a dual language district, and she missed it. But I would have given anything for her to learn Spanish, and she has tried to learn Spanish her whole life. Kindergarten, she asked Santa to be a Spanish speaker. That was what she asked Santa in kindergarten. And so now she's sitting in a Spanish class right now, a high school Spanish class in middle school, and struggling, but loves the language. And same thing, I would have fought tooth and nail to get my kid in if it were available to 2nd graders when we moved there. So I think that that in and of itself is going to be an issue, and just be prepared for that issue, because I do feel like after we do all of the quality parent communication that we plan to do, I think we're going to see an overwhelming desire to be a part of that program. So we have talked about that at the administrative level in our with our principals and our assistant principals. And so if we are not able to service just a ton of kids in dual language, maybe we can implement a Spanish class as a creative, you know, like we go to music and we go to band and we go to, you know, as a separate thing at the lower level also, so that we can maybe service more kids. Now, they would get in maybe once a week, and their goal would not be by literacy, it would maybe be exposure, but at least we're getting them exposed to that language. So that's something that we've talked about considering. That is not currently a part of phase 1, because we're trying to make sure that this runs really, really well. We are looking at a lottery system for qualification for EP students, automatically EB students, emergent bilingual students, which used to be, we used to call them ELL, English language learners, and then it went to EL, now it's EB, emergent bilingual. And so those kids will automatically be in. And I think the worry is that we're gonna have a very high population of parents that want their kids to learn Spanish at a young age. And so that will have to go through a lottery system.
I have a question for you. So looking ahead at this program, do you think that by the time these kids go through the different levels, the different cohorts, by the time they get to high school, this is my personal experience. I have 4 children. They don't speak a word of Spanish, but they took Spanish in high school. I have a granddaughter right now who's doesn't understand a word of Spanish. Now they're going to college, they have to take a foreign language. They still are not going to be proficient. So is this going to be something that's going to be an asset for them to pick up when they have to do a foreign language in high school?
So true acquisition of language by literacy, the research kind of shows that 2nd grade, 8 years old, is kind of the cutoff with, if they haven't been exposed to it, then you can learn it, but it's not a part of your just natural thinking process. And so that's the goal of this program, is to get them with it. Now, there is a commitment to it. The parents have to sign a commitment letter. You know, we live in the district, we own a home in the district, we're not moving from the district, because if we give them a seat in 1st grade, and then they go to 2nd grade and say, never mind, I don't like it, that takes a seat away from somebody else who could have committed to the process. And that'll all go into, so what we foresee it being is, and I've looked at several other districts that do a lottery system. I've not seen any district that does not do a lottery system, so I don't think anybody would be like, oh my gosh. You know. So what they do is they make it part of the application, and then they choose their lottery winners, and then from their lottery winners, they say, okay, but can you commit to this? And they have administrative staff meet with those people, with those families, and outline exactly what it is, what the handbook says, what they're gonna be expected to know and be able to do, and how that's gonna play out for them in advance. If we can carry the program into middle school, and we can have an SLRA class, which is a Spanish language arts credit for them, for all the dual language kids, then they would earn their high school equivalency just by being in the program. So they would generate what is the point? There's a point, LOT point, or there's a point that they can get for high school credit in middle school.
And they'll actually be proficient.
They'll actually, yes, be true speakers.
They can actually carry on a conversation.
Yeah.
But
And not
will
just-
this program, I mean, I don't know anything about it, so my question is, and as far as the ISDs, look at the Dallas ISD, follow them from when they started it. I met the superintendent who started it at the conference, amazing what he did in Dallas
Yeah.
with it. So is it our goal that the kindergarten kid is gonna be able to have this all the way through high school, or do we not follow it through high school?
At least right now, in our current planning, at least all the way through 5th grade, or proficiency.
I understand that, but,
And the rest of the phases.
yeah, and I mean, so, once this, in 5 years, wouldn't we be able to have junior high already?
Oh, yes, that's the plan.
I mean, that's
So-
what I'm saying, the goal is to carry this, so that we've lost so much already. So that our kindergarten, who's gonna get lucky enough to have this program, will be lucky enough to graduate with this program. That would be my goal for this,
Yes.
for the school district.
Yes, and that's the end result. Right now, in our current implementation planning,
Yeah, I
we
get
are
it,
not considering
yeah.
middle school,
No,
but,
I get it.
but we will. We'll now have 3 years to get there, so
That
3 or
will
4
probably go into part of the criteria profile of a TM graduate, that they be
Exactly.
bilingual.
imagine the colleges
because
would be after
I
them?
mean, y'all are in business and industry. My guess is it's a big asset.
Absolutely.
Oh my God, I mean,
Not
I
necessarily
can only,
colleges, but the career
The career
opportunities, and just
opportunities.
what doors that will open for our students.
and I understand, like Houston, I was talking to some people from the ISD in Houston, their dual language is, different languages, right? Because
Oh,
they're
yeah,
so
like
diverse.
Vietnamese and.
Vietnamese and stuff like that, which is great, right? But for our South Texas kids, I would think Spanish and English, but, I mean, that doctor out of the Dallas ISD, I mean, there was colleges coming after his kids,
Yeah.
just because they had all these credentials in dual language, not bilingual, dual language.
Biliterate. I mean, they're
Biliterate.
truly biliterate students. And that goes both ways for your English proficient kids and your native Spanish speakers. And so if your student was in the bilingual program because you speak Spanish in the home, but your student doesn't necessarily speak Spanish, we're gonna still teach him Spanish because he's in the bilingual program.
Yeah.
Because on your home language survey for our EB students, that's how they get in. Sorry, there's a gnat. That's how they get into the EB program, is on your home language survey as an entering kindergartner or pre-kindergartner, your parent puts that you are Spanish speaking in the home. And so that will automatically qualify those kids, but just similar to your kids, even though you speak it in the home, the kids are not learning it in the home. So even those students will be learning in their native language. If their native language dominance is English, then they'll learn their RLA, they'll learn to read in English, but everything else will be in Spanish. Their science might be in Spanish, or they'll learn their reading in conjunction with Spanish. So it's truly a biliteracy.
Yeah, but it can even have more of a domino effect than that when these kids start going home and teaching their parents.
Oh, yeah.
So. it's
So
just
our
big.
current phase, like I mentioned earlier, we're a little worried about 1st grade because we do have a teacher that's considering retirement. She's told us now that she is not going to retire because she's very excited about this program. But if that teacher does decide to retire and we are not able to find another dual language or bilingual teacher, it will be a challenge to do 1st grade because we've got to start training very soon, like the end of May. And so, and Gomez, we mentioned this to him, and he said, I can come back specifically for any new teacher, but trying to get parents on board and everything like that, that will be a challenge. So right now, we are for sure pre-K kinder, and 1st grade is questionable. And then they'll be our pace cars. They'll cohort all the way up, and they'll kind of set the pace for us as we move through it. And so we'll be looking at outfitting 2 to 3 new classrooms every single year. So that cost is still gonna occur every single year. The partnership with Gomez and Gomez, it does drop significantly to about 10 to 12,000 next year, but that's still gonna be a cost. But currently with our bilingual budget, we can manage that. So we're not overly
So
concerned.
you
Philip, right?
mentioned, you mentioned the credits earlier, 0.15 and 0.05. Is there any point with the number of kids where the program is self-sustaining?
I am not the math wizard on that.
Okay.
I'm sure there is a way to set up that ratio, but I think I probably missed that day in algebra. So I'm sure that somebody can figure that out.
I'm sure Philip will tell you, hey, you're doing a good job. It's
But in all reality, if we don't have EB kids, we can only carry a certain number of EP kids. Unless that changes within Texas Education Code. And we kind of cussed and discussed it, not really cussed, but we kind of went back and forth with, are you sure that that's what this is saying? Are we really certain that, because that kind of limits you, because we were already looking at kindergarten, maybe putting 11 and 10 EP students. But when you go back to the 60-40, then you have to make some tough decisions. And so we're still kind of battling that 60-40. We're gonna see if there's, somebody that can offer some clarification on that. Gomez has not responded back yet today about that question, because we posed that to him today, because I didn't read it until today. So I think there's still some flexibility there, but I do think that TEA is trying to limit, a district trying to generate funding for bilingual program by just throwing, 20 EP students that don't necessarily demonstrate a need for bilingual funding.
How many within our district, do you know how many schools have actually implemented this program?
I know Gregory Portland is close to it.
One way, aren't they?
They're one way only. And so their dual language is a little, it's interesting because they take all their dual language kids to one campus, but it's just a one-way dual language, so they are only learning Spanish at that campus. So it's very interesting there. We will not do that. I feel like that's sort of limiting things, and so we will not do anything like that. Either we go two-way or we don't do dual language, because it's just not, I don't think it's necessarily fair to kind of section out a group of kids. I don't think that that's, ECDC used to be dual language, and it was affiliated with Corpus Christi A&M. Their program has changed, but I've not studied it in a few years. We just moved back to the area, so the closest that we found with our demographics, like our similar ratio of students, was Harlingen. And so we tried to schedule a visit with Harlingen before Christmas break, but they're doing Christmassy things. So we can get with you at the next year. So Gomez is going to specifically set us up with campuses to tour and watch. And so we're going to take some teachers. We're looking at Clear Creek, ISD, and then there's two others that we're looking that are also similar to our demographic. We don't want to go anywhere where there's not a similarity. Right.
And Clear Creek is in Lake City. It's in that area.
Right, Houston-ish, right?
Yeah, Houston-ish.
Kim, I think as a board, it'd be good for us to go visit also and see what they do. I would love to see what a true dual language campus is doing.
We can certainly take 3 of them, definitely.
Well, I'm in.
I'll keep you posted. We'll keep you posted on when we get that
No
visit
lottery
scheduled.
for
We're gonna do a lottery.
No lottery for Ben.
Y'all can do a lottery for
We're very excited about it.
Shotgun is.
Any other questions, guys?
Great information.
Just know it's
Very
coming.
exciting.
We're working on it really diligently, and we think we've got a good, clear pathway that's not gonna overkill our administrators, our campus administrators, because they still have regular stuff going on too.
Sure.
So they don't have, just an infinite amount of time to devote to implementing this new program. So I think we've got a good balance of buy-in with just kind of taking care of some things for them. And so that's the goal, is to not overload them and let them continue running their campus, but also include them. So that's where we're at.
Thank you so much, Ms.
You're
Moody.
welcome. We're excited about it. I'm learning more and more every day.
All right. So that was report only, so no board action is needed. Moving on to item number 7, discuss and consider update of board policy BBB local.
Madam President, members of the board, this was a trustee requested item. It's currently not in action item form. The administration will have no recommendation on this. We will stay neutral because it's clearly a board decision. However, after your discussion tonight, I would like to see some consensus as to whether to move this to the legal stage where they could articulate some language that then you could consider and possibly adopt.
Can we speak?
Yes.
Okay, when Denise first brought this up to me, or brought it up, I think about a year ago, I guess,
Yes.
about a year ago. I thought it was a great idea, and I'll tell you why, because it's hard. You sit on the board for a while, and, you have people that really want to engage and want to be a part of the system, want to be a part of the board, but, they don't want to run against Ben Benavides because we're friends. I think this takes that pressure off of people. I think, this last go-around, there was a couple of people that, would have been great for the board, but, it was a one-on-one or, it was a certain place. I like the idea. We don't represent certain city blocks anyway. We represent the whole district. I think it's time for a change. Once again, here we go again. It's time for a change. I would support it 100% on going to an at-large system. I think where you see, there's going to be 3 seats up in 24, where you normally would see possibly 6 people running for this thing. I think we could see 10, 12, 13, 14 people running for it because it's not a pressure of running against a certain candidate. It's just to get a place on the seat because you wanna serve your community. That's why I did it. I wanted to serve my community because there was things that were wrong. And I think I've, brought some of those up, maybe more than I should have, but I have brought things up. And I think people would really love to be able to do stuff for their ISD, but they don't want to have to be able to compete or have to say, I have to compete against Janie if I want to help, if I want to do this. I don't want to compete against her. So, I think it's a great idea. I think more people would be more open to come and serve the community, and I would support it.
Yeah, the first time Denise had told me about it was a while back, and I 100% am on board with it also. I think it breaks a lot of red flags that might be a tape that you think that you've got to cut through to get to where you need to be. Your vote, when you go in to vote, you're voting for all the top individuals that you think would do the best job. And I think it's a great idea.
I agree. I've never understood the places. What do they stand for? Neighborhoods?
They do
What?
not. Yeah, our places are completely arbitrary. Currently, school districts that do have at-large voting outside of, I guess, like CCISD, which do places per neighborhood, and then like several at-large members. GP is all at-large, London, Sit-in, Westoso, Banquetti, Taft. They don't have arbitrary places as we do here. We all represent TM as a whole, and yeah.
Yep, I agree. I talked to Ben about this. I think it's a good idea. I think it does create more involvement from the community without as much, because we are a tight-knit community, right?
That's right.
And some people think it's personal against them, but it's the spot that's there. It's not personal. We all want what's best for our kids, and because we're such a tight-knit community, I went to school with Janie's daughter. I know your daughter, your niece, they all play sports together. It's nothing personal, so I think it takes away that aspect, and it does take it back to a community feel. You vote for the best in the pool, and may the best person win, and lead by example and do what we're trying to do here as a team. So I'm all for it.
Yeah, I think it would keep more of a positive manner during the election, in my opinion.
That too.
Yeah, and I think this last election was really, some people went through some unjust negativity,
You think?
that was not warranted, and I think that's, unfortunately, I think that's where we're headed. A lot of people get emotional in certain things, and they don't think about people's well-being or even their safety. So I think it alleviates some of that, and we can learn from this last election. And I think we should learn from this last election so that we don't put people into that kind of atmosphere again, so.
Okay, then I think I have,
Got consensus?
I think I've got my consensus, and I will instruct.
Oh, no, I mean, at the end of the day, I think it's the voters deciding, and that's the important thing. I mean, irregardless, but I think it's a good idea. I mean,
I will bring back language at the January 9th meeting so that you can move forward.
That was a great discussion. All right. Our next agenda item is discuss and consider approval of the consent agenda and informational items. So the first one is the check payment registry. Does anybody have any questions?
Still trying to learn how to understand it.
What? Remember it.
I don't have any.
No progress on getting it in a different format?
It's all of those.
Philip, is there any sense of, I see there's some columns that run together, budget unit. Is that, would that be like expense classification or something? like
Correct.
that?
Every piece of that account code means something. The first four digits are the fund. There's, the account code is 20 digits, and there's about 7 parts to it. Each part means something.
Okay. And so it looks like this is just an order of date, right?
Yes,
Date order?
because we pretty much do AP checks once a week, so it's the check run for that week or for that, however many check runs we do.
And I know you mentioned that it's somewhat cumbersome, the system, I mean, with regards to sorting and doing those kind of things.
True, and it still is I've only been live on this, I've only been live with the finance system 1 year, so
Oh, okay.
we're still learning
You're still
how
working through some.
how the reports work, how they, a lot of the reports are not that helpful.
I'm just wondering at some point if we can get a listing of by classification, by budget classification as opposed to date order. I mean,
Just a
that's,
listing.
that's helpful too, but that way we know if this is a budget line item, what's being spent, I mean, I know you got plenty to do. I just thought if that's a way you could do something fairly easy, maybe it might help us.
Okay.
If we're looking at a certain budget line item, we can see what falls into that category. Not critical, just something that would be helpful.
That would help at a budget workshop too.
We can do that.
Any more questions? Any more discussion? All right, number 2 is budget amendments.
Philip, do you want to walk them through the budget amendment?
All the budget amendments are just reallocating, it's not increasing the bottom line at all. It's just, it goes back to like the legally adopted budgets, which is just the general fund, the debt service, and the food service fund. And these are all in the general fund, and they're just things, and they can be different ones, like the one for the intermediate school, that's their request. They've chosen to reallocate their budget from one function to another within their program. The big one for the On Behalf, that's just something that came up in this new system. On Behalf it's a calculation that we have to do. It's calculating, we have to record the expense and the revenue of what the state contributes towards our TRS retirement for our TRS employees, which is virtually almost everybody. So the new system does not calculate that. I have to calculate it manually. And in the process of calculating that manually, I went ahead and noticed that, hey, I need to align this budget by function appropriately. So that's all I'm doing is just realigning it to how I need it to flow for the rest of the year. And then I believe, then there's one on there about for our GT, I think it's our EE program, our early education, which is the allocation that we get for kindergarten or pre-K through third grade, reading and math, extra stuff for that to make sure that everybody's on level by the third grade. The initial budget that was adopted, and now that we got the instruction department, we had to reallocate to say, well, we want more in staff development or we want more in this based upon how we were doing the training. So it's just reallocating the EE program based upon how we decided to run it and how we decided to use the resource a little differently than how we originally adopted the budget. I think it was 5 of them. I know I left one of them out, but
There were 5.
yeah.
So you must,
Oh, I'm sorry.
you must have been anticipating a surplus in the instruction category to take from there to.
Well, whatever was put in, are you talking about like on the On Behalf one?
Yeah, well, I'm just looking at the amendments, and you've taken 144,000 from instruction and reallocated, it, just like as you mentioned.
Right, if you're looking at the
zero.
summary, and the biggest one is the On Behalf, when I do the estimates at the beginning of the year, it's a very complex formula that's based upon salaries, TRS salaries, so I usually do it by a pretty rough guesstimate about how much to put in each function.
Right.
But it's just this other, normally I clean it up at the end of the year, but since I have to do this extensive process to even calculate On Behalf, I have to do it manually. That's where it brought it to the forefront that I see where I'm off, I need to go ahead and get it lined up correctly.
Any more questions? Number 3 is the tax collection report.
One thing I'll say about that, there's 2 in there, because sometimes the report doesn't come from the county in time to get onto the next meeting. So we've got 2 months. I will say collections are running a little bit higher through the first 3 months than they did compared to last year. I don't know. That really doesn't mean anything. I have this detailed chart where I track how much comes in. Basically, I have it down to the week and the month just to see, how the cash flows in. But the collection rate is a little bit higher compared to the year before.
Are you talking about collection rate for this year?
Yes, compared to at this time last year.
Could that be based on increased values?
Possibly, but actually, it's the percentage of the levy that's collected. So it does mean that even if the levy goes up, we're talking about percentages, so it's going up a little bit.
It looks like the delinquent's going down.
Are you looking at October?
I'm looking at the bottom,
The bottom.
where the levies are at.
Let me comment a little bit there, because you're gonna see me in the news in a day or two. Apparently, Nueces County has over $1.5 million in an excess taxes account that has been dormant for between 10 and 30 years. Excess taxes are when a property is foreclosed on and it's sold, and there's more money than generated than what the tax bill is. The taxing entities are paid, and there's a surplus of funds. By statute, the county district clerk is to notify the property owners, and they have 2 years to recoup the money. And then if they don't, then it's spread proportionally to the taxing entities, which the ISDs are always the highest taxing entity, and we'll get the lion's share. Well, there's this $1.5 million, at least that, in this escrow account that apparently the county can't determine who's been notified, who hasn't been notified, what is owed to the ISDs, what's not owed to the ISDs. What brought it to the attention of some people is the county, knowing that that money was there, asked for over $500,000 to be paid to Nueces County. I don't agree with that. I think if TMISD is owed $10,000 from that money, we should receive $10,000. I don't think we should be paid anything more or anything less. I think if property owners haven't been notified, I think before any of that money should be dispersed, they should be notified. Denise, I know you've spoken with Kevin Kiesnick. Do you have anything additional to add?
He said that the statute said that Nueces was not allowed to touch that money, so that got turned down. So they will go, I guess, the appropriate route. I'm not exactly sure in terms of them contacting the property owners, how long that.
I've contacted our tax attorney, Linebarger. They're aware of what's going on and will advocate for our piece of the pie, whatever that may or may not be. Just a fascinating, yes, that, it starts with a phone call.
So are you talking about delinquent taxes owed to, no?
I'm talking about delinquent taxes that's turned into a foreclosure, and they've sold the property. And they've paid all the taxing entities what's owed, and then there's money left. And that's excess taxes. And it apparently adds up to a large sum of money that's not incurring any interest, just
sitting there, and people could be using it, districts could be using it. So I guess you'll keep us up to date on
I
that.
definitely will.
Any more discussion? All right, number 4 is the enrollment report.
John, do you have that data?
I do. You know, put it up on the screen, or?
They have it, just
Okay.
to comment.
Yeah, just as you kind of can see from the trends, without even really looking at it, just knowing what it is. Usually around this time period, you kind of start seeing a little bit of a dip as we start closing out the semester and few of our students start exiting the district for whatever reason. However, it was an interesting day today when we enrolled eight students, which I don't want to say is like a record, but it's a little unusual at this time of the year, knowing we have around 4 to 5 days left of the school year. And it's a bit of a challenge when students come in and to get them caught up on our system with our grades and our exams and what have you. But overall, you can tell that based on the data you're looking at from when we started the school year, we're up around 280-something students. And I think that's a really good thing, and we just need to continue that momentum in any way that we can. And to kind of talk about attendance as well, we're hovering right around 93% ADA for the district currently.
That's an improvement.
Which is definitely an improvement.
You're going to see an increase in enrollment at every campus because of what high school's doing with their transition, with Warpath, what we're doing with dual language, the middle school. It's a very attractive district to send your children to. The upgrades in the athletic facilities will help. There's no doubt in my mind.
What, the 6 ACC kids, what happened to them?
They graduated.
They graduated in December.
I will be going to a parent orientation Thursday evening. Is it still 14 or is it 9 that's transitioning over there?
I believe it's 14.
Okay. So we're looking forward to providing some accelerated opportunities for some high school kids that need that.
Starting in January.
Yes.
Any questions? Looks like we gain students every month, which is a good thing.
It's a great district.
All right, do we have a recommendation?
We do. It is the
Oh,
administration's.
sorry, we didn't go over number 5, regular and special call board meeting minutes. Did anybody have any questions on those after review? It was a great meeting. All right, sorry.
No, it is the administration's recommendation that the board approve the consent agenda items as presented.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
All right, Leo makes the motion. Does anybody second it? Paul will second it. All those in favor? Motion carries 6-0. All right, the board will convene in closed session now. Closed meeting is authorized by the Texas Open Meetings Act to discuss items allowed by the Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, 071-.076.082.0821.083.084. It is 8:35 and we're going to go into closed session. All right, December 12th, 2022, it is 9:02 and we have reconvened from closed meeting. Do we have action resulting from closed session deliberation?
Yes, ma'am. Madam President, members of the board, it is recommended that the Board of Trustees issue an educator probationary contract for the remainder of the 2022-23 school year to Mr. Ramiro Solis.
Do we have a motion?
Also make that.
Ben makes the motion.
I'll second.
Leo seconds it. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
Madam President, members of the board, it is recommended that the Board of Trustees accept the resignation of Ms. Jenna Lieb.
Do we have a motion? I'll make that motion. And Janie seconds it. All in favor? Motion carries 6-0. See, our future meetings is this Wednesday, December 14th. It's a special called board meeting for some more training. There's no further business and a tour. Everyone's welcome.
Everyone's welcome.
Do we have any more business?
None.
All right. We have a motion to adjourn the meeting. We have 6 motions. Anybody second it?
6.
All right. It's 9:04, December 12th, 2022, and this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you and happy holidays.
Yes, Merry Christmas, everybody.